Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life. Every week we get together for about an hour and we talk about one small portion of what it means to build a better life. And we hope that it resonates with you just like it resonates with us. And by us, I mean myself, JDK Wyneken, and also my friend, my business partner, my person I go to for a lot of things, actually. And she tends to deliver on a very regular basis. Ashley Knebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, that's a new one.
I like to mix it up.
Wow.
I like to mix it up.
That.
It's my writing chops.
I'm glad I'm delivering for you.
You are. You always are. How are you?
Doing quite well.
That's good.
How are you?
You know, I'm a little tired today.
Oh?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I've just a lot of stuff going on.
You need to sleep more.
You
need restful sleep, probably.
Yes. I actually sleep well most nights. Last night was not one of those nights, but that's okay. That's all right. I'm making my way through with the help of, that
caffeine. Red Bull sitting right there staring at me.
One's staring at you. I know. Not sponsored, but Red Bull, if you are interested, let us know. All right. So today we are going to be talking, we're going to be talking today about failure, but not failure in a big sense. We're going to talk about the importance of small failures, or as we could call them, small stumbles. And
stumbles, that's
right,
cute.
Small stumbles, right? And none of us like the word failure, right? It creates kind of a visceral response in ourselves when we hear that or when we consider it. Or if you're listening to this and going, I remember failing, probably doesn't feel good to remember that failing. There's reasons for that. However, what we want to talk about today is why little mini failures, we could call them, or small stumbles. We'll come up with lots of names. Why they actually might be one of the most important things we can experience and embrace and track for our larger growth. And that type of growth is what we mean by building a better life. So, Ashley,
yes.
Failures.
What about them?
I don't know. Have you had any?
I've had some small stumbles here and there.
You told us last week how awesome you are. So, and how,
obviously. But I only have become so awesome because I've had some failures and some small stumbles here, and I'm willing to embrace them.
Oh, good. And it's going to give us a chance to share a lot with you listeners today about some of these things. And just to tell you where this came from, I had kind of a confluence of different things happen this week that reminded me that I don't like failing in any way, shape, or form, whether they're mini or not. That stumbles happen and happen on a regular basis. And if I can see them as positive things, not only will I learn from them, but I can actually reduce the amount of pressure and anxiety and stress I'm feeling in the moment about them. If I simply reframe them as feedback or, opportunities, that type of thing. And not to make it sound too sing-songy or anything like that, but that a lot of things happen this week. And some of them we'll probably end up talking about. But that's where this came from. So if you think about it, Ashley, how often do you probably have mini failures?
Oh, mini failure. That's kind of a tough one. I don't feel like I have them on the regular. There are times where I let myself down. And if we want to count that as a failure, that does happen.
Of course.
A time or two I told myself, oh, you're going to do this. And then I end up not. But if we're talking about things outside of just relying on myself, thankfully, they don't happen super often. Maybe I'm just setting the bar really high for what a failure is. So I'm like, well, clearly I don't have those.
So you don't do mini failures. You just do medium failures and maximum failures.
Whatever feels good.
Failures.
Maximum failure. Yeah, I'm sure those grandiose ones. No, I do have things, right? I mean, there's times where I'll deem it as like, hey, you could have handled that situation a lot better because of how you presented yourself wasn't the most professional, or you kind of let your little snarky tone come out more than it should, things like that. Then maybe if you want to count those as a micro failure, then I have those.
I think we can. I think what it would be very helpful probably to define some terms, right?
Sure.
And as we've talked about before, building resilience, which is really what this show is about, right? Building resilience is a way to kind of frame a better life because you're resiliently working your way through it, is dependent upon learning things the hard way.
Yeah.
Whether they are small, small doses like micro failures, or big things either you fail at or big things that happen, right? Things out of our control, right? Not everything is about failure and success. Sometimes things are just about things that happen, right? But we don't develop resilience without it, right? And so even though we have a biologically driven desire to avoid failure, it's not just a moral imperative, it's actually an evolutionary imperative. We do kind of need to learn that way in a lot of ways, right? And that's also kind of evolutionary in design. And actually, you could probably also call it moral and ethical. It's really difficult to decide or really know what you believe in morally or ethically in a lot of ways, unless you've really come up against the opposite of that and made a decision of, okay, I don't want to go that way. I'm going to go this way, right? Or this thing is not important to me, but this thing is, or this thing is right and this thing is wrong. We kind of have to know what those are, right?
Right.
You don't really know what darkness is unless you know what light is, right? Or you don't know what heat is unless you know what cold is. So that is sort of part of that. And the evolutionary part of this is we are risk averse for a reason, because the people who don't stand at the edges of cliffs, literally or figuratively, are more than likely to not fall off said cliff and pass on, right, their genetic material. And it keeps going. That's to put it in the crassest of terms, that is how this works.
I mean, if they fell off that cliff, they would not be passing on their genetic material.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean is if they fell, but if they aren't anywhere near the cliff, then there isn't really a chance of them falling off the cliff.
Probably not.
Right? That's the idea. Now, that's very, very simply put, right? Very basically put. However, that is that our amygdala in our brain is the part that kind of helps regulate fear. It helps us assign value to things, and it tells us when we have a visceral response to danger. Like, anytime we have those things, we're just like, yeah, I'm not going into that dark alley, literally or figuratively. That's from that response. It's meant to do that. It's meant to keep us safe. And we tend to assign failure as an unsafe thing because it could be in some ways, right?
Could be.
Fail to drive your car well, you drive it into a ditch.
Yeah. Or you drive into somebody else. I mean,
right.
Those failures are almost like the little barriers that we've been given in life, kind of like what are the bumper walls when you're going bowling?
Oh yeah,
to like help you learn. What are those called? Yeah,
they're bumper runners.
Yeah, those things. Yeah. Because when you're growing up, you go to school, you go to religious structure, family, and then you get a little older and you start going to the workforce type of thing. There are these rules and guidelines that you are taught. And it's essentially like, if you stay within these, then you will not fail. And in our younger years, at least in mine, failure was like a horrific thing. And I think that was self-inflicted on myself. I had very high standards for myself as a little kid. So failing at anything was like the worst. But I've noticed, like, as a kid, like, your punishment always followed a failure.
Of course.
And now when you get older, unless it's in like a professional setting, like workplace or something like, or maybe you mess up in a relationship, there is a form of punishment. But I'm like, whenever I do micro fails on myself, there's no punishment.
Unless you decide.
Unless I decide, but I consciously don't do that.
I know.
And then I'm like, is this why I keep having these same micro fails? Because I'm not learning the lesson, because I'm not.
Oh, they keep happening.
They keep the same ones will keep happening. And I'm like,
because you don't punish yourself?
No one is telling me, there's no repercussion for my little fail.
That's interesting, because at first I was just joking that it makes me mad. Like, you don't have any consequences. You don't punish yourself, because I punish myself for every little thing. I tend to.
I don't.
I know,
maybe
but
I
now
should once in a while. But and I'm like,
probably
maybe
in the middle.
Probably somewhere.
Probably
you don't want to be too hard on yourself, but at the same time,
right,
that might be something worth thinking into.
Well, and I think it's a great point, because you're talking about conditioning, right? We get conditioned in the families we grow up in the environments that we're in school. In some ways, the way schools tend to be laid out there is by success versus lack of success, right? And so the idea of if you're successful, you're getting A's. If you're getting less than that, it's varying degrees of success and or failure. Right. And depending on lots of different contexts, it could be cultural, it could be lots of different ones. Some levels of failure are higher than others,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. Workplaces, it's the same thing. So, mistakes tend to be highlighted and punished in that conditioning. And so that heightens fear, takes us back to the amygdala response.
Mm-hmm.
So, see where those two things come together? See, I know, pretty good, right?
Wow.
All right. So, what are some micro fail examples that come to
Yeah.
mind? Do you
Oh,
have any? And we can go anywhere. When you're a kid.
I mean, I have like a couple that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic.
Mhm.
There was one, gosh, I was very little because I was learning how to ride my bicycle and I did not have training wheels. I got rid of those very fast, but I was still very young, probably like single digits. And where my parents lived, there was kind of a steep driveway. It's short driveway, but it's pretty steep. And back in the day when I'm trying like to ride my bike down or like walk my bike down the driveway so then I can ride it on the street, it was too heavy and it would drag me along. So I used to just let my bike roll down the driveway and it would crash at the end and then I would just go down and pick it up and then I could ride it around. Well, I didn't think as a kid to look to see if there's any cars coming.
Oh.
So there was one time I'm like, I'm gonna go ride my bike. And I let it like roll down the driveway and it definitely T-boned the side of a car. And I was so embarrassed that
Did you fly off the bike?
I wasn't on the bike. That's just it. Is normally
You
I would
let it
like
go.
walk the bike down the driveway and then ride it on the flat street.
Got it.
But if I tried to walk it down, it was too heavy. So then I went and hid in the garage. And then of course my dad heard a noise and comes out and he's had to deal with the situation. But
Oh
yeah.
man, did you dent the car?
I think there was a small dent. It wasn't as like how the bike hit should have done more damage, but I think because it was still a kid's bike, it wasn't so bad.
Gotcha.
That was really embarrassing, and I was like, I should have looked both ways. Should have made
Mhm.
sure cars.
So did you get punished for that?
You know, I got a stern talking to,
Sure.
but it wasn't like you're grounded. I
Got
mean, I was like 7,
Right.
8,
Yeah. Not quite
so
grounding
however
age.
you deal with that at that age. But
Right.
it
Gotcha.
certainly felt like a punishment. I was
Gotcha.
not happy.
Okay. So what
about
did you learn from that?
Um, that I need to look both ways
Okay.
before I let my bicycle roll down the driveway. Or just wait till you're large enough that you can walk your bike down without it dragging you along.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. One for me that comes to mind is when I was a kid, when I learned to play T-ball,
Mhm.
and I was probably about the same age, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And I really wanted to play because my friends were playing. But for whatever reason, having a ball on it, first of all, throwing a ball to me to try and hit was just, there was no point. I was just going to swing wildly and my coordination was not very good. But so you'd think putting a ball on a tee would be a lot easier. That's the whole
Sure.
idea. I could not hit that stupid thing.
What?
Yeah, I kept hitting just underneath it. So I'd hit
Oh,
I hit
no.
the tubing just below
Yeah.
it. And it took me the longest time. And the coaches have you measure it, like so you like put the ball bat up to the ball. And I just kept missing. Now,
Really?
to me, in that mindset, it felt like I was missing for months,
Yeah.
right? But
Big deal.
probably not. It was probably like a day or two, right? A couple practices. And I remember the coach standing with me, and it was always about, just keep your eye on the ball and swing that right towards there. But it took me forever to do it, and I'd get super frustrated
Sure.
and embarrassed, right? Because
Mhm.
all your friends are sitting out there, and of course, it's a bunch of other 6-year-olds, so they're kind of daydreaming
Yeah.
aimlessly, picking their nose, scratching an itch somewhere. They're not paying attention. But for whatever reason, it was super embarrassing for me, or I remember it being embarrassing that not being able to do that. And then I remember very clearly the first time I hit that ball square and it went right over second base. Not only did
Mhm.
I not hit it on the ground, I hit it out of the infield.
Nice.
That was great. And so what I learned, which was really important, was that the need to keep practicing. And
Mhm.
for the longest time I played baseball, I had no trouble after that, taking a lot of swings, making a lot of misses, because I just experienced the need to just practice,
Sure.
practice, 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 practice. It was a pretty important lesson for me as
That's
a
a
kid.
really good lesson to learn.
Yeah. I have other ones though, because I'm still dealing with it now. Like I've shared on the show before, I'm doing some bartending on the side these days.
Mhm.
And boy, you want to talk about a job where you can have micro fails, right?
Oh?
Oh yeah. Like you get a drink wrong, right? Somebody
Mm.
orders something and you get one ingredient wrong, or if you get 5 or 6 at a time, you may not always, get them all out in the right order or get them all out exactly right. And you have to just learn from that, right?
Mhm.
Now, fortunately, I work at a place where they're all really encouraging, like, yeah, we all learn the same way. Don't worry about it, right? Just remake it, right? Or here, let me show you how to do it. And but for me, I have to learn by doing,
Sure.
right? I do. Somebody can show me and I can follow it. I can read a direction, but I really have to do it,
Mhm.
right? And so, oh, I don't like doing it, right? I don't like the feeling of, oh, okay, I made a mistake on that. Let me fix that. But those things do matter, right? They
Mhm.
do matter. So it matters for the health of the business and for my skill as a bartender. So that's just
Sure.
an adult.
Well, you're dealing with live humans and however they're gonna react to that.
Yeah.
Um, I I've been in similar situations, like, when I worked at Starbucks, that was my first real job, and they put me on bars, I was making the drinks, of course, a lot of mistakes came out of that,
Mhm.
but actually, the one from that, I was the pre-closer, so I was the one that came on, like, mid-afternoon and, like, till early evening, and I did, like, all the deep cleaning of everything and get everything ready so the closer's job is a little bit easier, and I was I understood what the job was, and I don't know why I was moving at such a slow pace, but I was very nervous and just unsure of what the expectations were. Apparently, it was so bad to the point that my supervisor had to pull me aside, and he was very kind, and this has forever left an imprint. And he was like, tell me, like, you know what? We want to be as efficient as possible, but do it as fast as we can.
Mm.
And I was visually nervous, like, I was shaking, I was so nervous because I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
"I messed this up, they're calling me aside," and I already was hard on myself about it,
Mhm.
and oddly, that turned around, and I learned, like, what I was able to actually accomplish, and then I became the best pre-closer in that
There you
in
go.
that store,
There you
and
go.
people started actually just asking for me to be their
That's
pre-closer.
great.
Like, "Great."
Was it a pretty quick transition after that?
Probably took, like, a couple weeks to get, like,
Okay.
in a routine of, like, what is considered efficient and quick,
Got it.
but it
Got it.
was yeah, that moment was just awful to go through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I actually think if we sat and thought about it, and anybody listening, take some time to think about it. How many times, probably daily, are there things that happen like that where you go, "Ugh,"
Mhm.
right? "Wish that wouldn't have happened," or, "Ugh, that would've gone better." There's so many of those, right? And it's important to note here as we move towards our first break, that avoiding failure is a very natural thing, as we talked about. We want to avoid that. We want to achieve. We want to do things well, quote unquote, right. But it is not inevitable that that's going to, these are going to happen.
Mhm.
Right. And so the degree to which we can not, first of all, not just accept that fact that these types of failures are inevitable, but actively reframe it away from failure and towards a learning opportunity has actually been proven to reduce our stress. Carol Dweck, who coined the term growth mindset, we hear it all the time, talked about this, and that was the basis of her work. That is, simply by reframing things in a different way in our minds, we actually shift our neurotransmissions of that type of assignment to ourselves. That changes our chemical responses to stress, reduces cortisol, increases a sense of well-being. All these things matter, right? And we do get to choose: is a failure a catastrophe of any kind, or is it an opportunity to grow? And so that's what we're talking about today. So when we come back from our first break, we'll talk about the hidden power of these micro fails in particular, and how they work and why they're so beneficial for us. So stick around, everybody. We'll be right back on Staying Power.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Wherever you go, Alternative Talk 1150 is here for you.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are talking about small stumbles, mini failures, micro fails, whatever we want to call them, those little things that can happen quite often that we never like, but actually, if we really stop and think about them, and if we just reframe them just slightly, can be really, really positive for us. And it's not just me saying it, it's study after study after study over the last 15 to 20 years showing that is how we build resilience. In fact, little things like that happen a lot more often than the big things that we tend to focus on. And so if we can learn how to better handle the smaller things and reframe the smaller things, it puts us in a better position when the big things happen to be better able to reframe them rather than waiting for the big things to happen and just crossing our fingers and hoping that'll work. Right, Ashley?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that kind of research, I think, is really important to what we're going to talk about in this segment, right? The idea of little small things, small stressors, us reframing them to grow can actually build our stamina over time or our resilience over time in really profound ways. Just like saving $5 a day, right? And putting in your bank account can add up over time and it's building interest. Or I think about automatically, going to the gym, getting exercise, right? You don't lift huge amounts of weights right away. You have to work your way up because, of course, you have to build the resilience in the muscles. Those tears, those fibers, they have to heal. That's why they get sore and they get stronger.
Right.
Right. So those are the examples that I think of.
Sure. I mean, I would say like jujitsu is kind of the same way.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Especially if you go consistently. But your first year is incredibly humbling because,
oh man, I would
especially if you've never done anything like this before, everything you're doing is weird. You're very close to people that you don't know. Like there's no,
because it's a lot of grappling.
yes.
Right?
So it's very similar to like wrestling, right? So there's like zero space between you and another person, and you're doing all these weird moves. And especially if, depending on how flexible or how athletic you are, maybe they're comfortable, maybe they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a two-sided coin with that of like learning the new like moves that you're doing and the new combinations of things and whatnot and submissions. And then it's also like, how do I get my body to do that? And then how do I remember? How do I build the muscle memory, but also like the actual memory of like when they call out something, you know how to do it.
Yeah. It would seem
it's really overwhelming. In the beginning. It's really fun, but it's a lot.
Well, I would think too, just having to learn how to deal with your personal space, like having none.
Yes.
We're not really used to that.
You have to get over that.
You have to get over that. Right?
Not your jam.
I mean, I remember learning sports when I played basketball when I was younger. I remember when I was first introduced that as to the physical sport that it really is. Right? There's not a lot of pads. There's not a lot of any of those things, but it's physical. Right. So it's not just shooting baskets. I remember getting knocked around quite a bit in middle school and high school. I was very tall and very skinny. So I was not really ideal for any position in basketball. So it was tough. Right. But soccer, the same thing. You to survive soccer, you have to learn how to get kicked in the shins, 15, 20 times a game and keep going, even though you have shin guards. I mean, I remember still having bruises all up and down, and you just have to get used to that. Right. And after a while, it doesn't slow you down. You get used to the pain or you get used to the shock of it. Your body experiences you being okay with it.
It was like that in kickboxing. The first time I got punched in the face was awful.
Wow. Punched in the face or kicked in the face?
It was punched in the face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I made the mistake. And so then they ended up hitting me in the face and it didn't go well the first time. It really it was very jarring because I've never had that. And it wasn't like awful. It's not like my nose is broken, but it was definitely like
a shock.
And then, after training and whatnot, 6 months down the road, I got hit a few times and it was like, it didn't happen. So I was like,
wow.
Okay. You just, repetition. It's not like that was part of our normal routine to do that to each other, but it does happen on occasion. And it got better.
I remember seeing it. That's good. I remember seeing a movie one time. I can't remember what it was, where one of the characters said one of the most important life lessons you can get is learning you can take a punch in the face.
It's absolutely true.
It's true. It's true. To know that you can, because nobody looks forward to it, right? Everybody's worried about it. But if you do take one, I've taken a punch to the face, right? And I survived it, right? I've also given a punch to the face and survived it.
That sounds like fun.
Interesting story. But nevertheless, that was actually important too, because I was bullied a lot as a kid. And so I didn't defend myself a lot. So the first time I actually did that, I was a freshman in high school.
Was it a micro win for you?
It was a micro win, but it turned out to be a pretty big win.
Okay.
That's a story I'll have to tell sometime.
Oh, well, we'll have to do micro wins.
Micro wins.
Okay.
Because that was kind of a big moment. But I was actually not even defending myself. This is a teaser. I was defending my sister. Actually, I came to my sister's defense.
All
Yeah.
right.
So anyway,
Good for you.
yeah, but there's so many. I've told the story on this show before when I was a kid and living in Hawaii and I had to sing a solo at a big event and there are all these, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. To me, in my mind at the time, it was millions.
Mhm.
But I broke down at the end of it. I ended up on the newspaper, front page of the newspaper. That wasn't fun. But I also remember other things like my sister, speaking of my sister, she really learns things quickly, always has. She learned how to read really quickly. She learned how to read music and play music really quickly. She could pick up on new languages really quickly. I was not that way. It took me longer. And so I had this automatic comparison when I was a kid,
Mhm.
with my sister. Not my sister's fault, right? Just that was the comparison. And I remember learning how to play the trumpet. That was the first, and my parents were making me do it, and I did not want to play it. The
Trumpet?
trumpet, yeah. The
Really?
trumpet, yeah, and I didn't like it at first, and then I remember once I remember r getting through the feeling of I don't remember the song, but through one line of a series of bars right there, getting through there and getting through it completely without a problem, and my band teacher going, "Great job."
Nice.
Remember that, and then all of a sudden I started to like it,
Hmm.
right? And it was a struggle. It was like T-ball again. I mean, the notes are all, it's tough to, it gets tough on the mouth.
Yeah, I was gonna say trumpets are not
Yeah, yeah, and
easy.
then I remember, one of my teachers, giving me a record of Miles Davis, right, who played trumpet, jazz trumpet,
Mhm.
perhaps the greatest of all time, and I never played like that, right? I'm not even that huge of a jazz fan, but I remember going, "Whoa, you can turn this weird looking brass thing into something magical,"
Sure.
right? So that whole thing, and it led to an appreciation for music for me.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I remember that too. There's all these different examples, right?
Do you have any large fails?
Oh, of course I have large fails. That's all I ever talk about on this show are my large
Well,
fails. I think it's a better question to ask about your large fails,
me?
but you asked me
Well,
first.
have you
So, well, large fails that we learn from? Absolutely. And I think we all have those moments,
Mhm.
right? We all
Sure.
have those moments. Either something self-inflicted or something happens to us that we don't necessarily handle well and our subsequent decisions are not great. We look back on them with regret or that type of thing. Yeah, I drove my whole life into a ditch 14 years ago. And the car flipped over, caught on fire, and I barely got out alive.
Is that a
Metaphorically.
metaphor?
Metaphorically.
Like,
Yeah. Now, the importance of that though is that was a whole series of that could be seen as a culmination of a whole series of micro failures that I was not learning from.
Mm,
Now, unlike the example you
interesting.
were talking about where you just weren't beating yourself up for it, I was avoiding any confrontation with those series of micro
Sure.
failures. I was avoiding it completely. And because I knew deep down these were
Mhm.
failures and they were
Mhm.
adding up into something bigger. And a series of decisions had to be made after that, right? Some decisions were made for
Sure.
me in terms of how I was going to live my life and
Mhm.
where I was, what was going to be possible for me. But I tell you what, after that happened, not long after it happened, I remember sitting with my dad. We were going over stuff, and my dad was being really, really great at a time where I was really just shredded. And I remember realizing, oh my gosh, all the things I thought would be the worst things that could ever happen to me that I can never survive have
Mhm.
now happened, and I'm still here.
Mm.
Okay. That means the fear of me destroying myself has now passed. I don't need to hold
Mhm.
on to that.
Mhm.
That was a huge moment. I remember exactly where it happened. It was in O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Story for another day. But that's when I first realized that.
Wow.
And so, yeah. Yeah. How about you?
I've had a couple large failures in life, but one kind of comes to mind. Funny because you asked me about this. You're like, what about relationships? And I had to chuckle because I'm like, well, actually, I've never been dumped. I've always been the one dumping people. So sorry, it's just the truth. Um,
Getting dumped
I
is not it's an
don't know
overrated
if you can count that
experience.
as a fail. Maybe that's rude of me to say.
I don't know.
But one did come to mind. And it's probably really relevant and relatable in modern day. This one happened for me probably like 7 or 8 years ago, actually, now that I think about it. I ended up dating somebody who for about a year and a half, made up this whole story and turns out it was all a lie and he was actively still dating who I thought was his ex.
Whoa.
for a year and a half.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And
Why is that a
I know
failure
there's
for
a lot
you?
of things.
Why is that a major
Because
failure for
there
you?
was a lot of signs that I chose to, out of the goodness and like good faith of like, okay, no, it's just a weird situation. Like they're just dealing with this. Oh, they can't break the lease yet. Okay, but they're going to break it soon, and go their separate ways. So he's just waiting for that to happen, whatever. Little stories like that would come up. And then it kind of ended up just becoming, I was like in my own denial where I was like,
yeah.
I've sold myself on this story so much that I'm with this person that even though people are trying to tell me like things are not adding up, I'm like,
Mhm.
I am not going to allow myself to look stupid, even though I did, because
Right.
I still chose to stay in this situation, believe it. And then come to find out everything came out online and the whole like year and a half previous was all a full lie.
That's how you discovered it, was online?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Online
wow.
photos. And then the whole
Wow.
thing came out and I'm like, honestly, when I've heard stories like this, I'm like, how does someone do that? And then I'm like, I have been that person. And you feel awful because then I'm like, I was like the third, the other girl
Mhm.
in this whole time, and I didn't even know I was the other girl. And then that
Oh.
felt bad. And I'm like, okay, no, you can't sell yourself on that story because you didn't know. So it's
Mhm.
okay. That's a him
Mhm.
problem, not a you problem. But yeah,
There were signs.
there were some signs that now looking back, I'm like, okay. And I learned a lot from that.
Yeah,
I learned so much.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
For example, not to believe those types of things. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. Pay
don't believe
attention to
things.
those flags when
Yeah,
you see
pay
them.
attention to those things when something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right,
Mhm.
and if you feel like you constantly have to be digging around in things to figure out stuff, then that's clearly a sign that, like, there's no trust there, and you should
Right.
probably not be in this situation anymore, but,
Right.
yeah, that was not a fun
Oh,
situation to be in.
no. No, that would not be. And yet, in both cases that we just brought up, much more common than I think people realize. I've spent a lot of time in the last 14 years with people who completely combusted their own lives the way I
Mhm.
did, and many of them in more spectacular fashion and with farther reaching consequences, which on one hand is sad because these are people you get to know and care about. The other hand, you can go, wow, okay, it could have been worse, right?
Mhm.
There's that. And in your case, not just in relationships, but in some ways, you're describing, for example, our entire political culture right now, right? Right?
Right?
People just
Bait and
continuing,
switch.
continuing to like hold on to old ideas and wanting to anchor them, even if
Mhm.
evidence comes
Yes.
forward,
Yeah.
right? That challenges them. And I think it has, and to be really compassionate about it, right? Maybe more so than some people would like me to be, but be compassionate about it in the sense of it can be really hard to let go of something if the message is, I am stupid for having believed this in the
Mhm.
first place, or, you know, I'm gonna be seen as a failure. I'm gonna be seen as an idiot. I'm gonna be seen as foolish. Those things are real and those things can make us hold on
Oh,
to things
sure.
long after we've actually seen the evidence
Yeah.
that they're bad for us. And
Mhm.
then that becomes I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted that dividing line to be clear. Because on one hand, his failure, this guy,
Yeah.
is the biggest problem here, right? That's the
Yes.
biggest problem here. But you being able to identify where yours took over,
Mhm.
I think is such a key part of building resilience where we can learn where is that line where on my side of the street, I'm responsible for this. Even if I'm not responsible for what this guy did,
Yeah.
I'm responsible for how I responded to it. Where did that line occur?
Mhm.
And it sounds like you found that.
I did. Because I had to face myself on it, and I'm like, yeah, I could pity party, and I had obviously some major distraught feelings and so on, but
Mhm.
betrayal and all that. However, I'm like, well,
And all that.
I mean, there's a lot of there's such a mess of emotions that come out of this. I
Oh
was
my
like so
gosh, yes.
angry, and I was upset, and then I was sad, and then I wanted to make terrible things happen for them, and then I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. Be the better person, and it just one after another, and and then I'm like, "Well, why don't you just start owning your side of the fence here?
There you go.
Because there's 2 of you in this for a year and a half, and
Mhm.
obviously you were doing something to make this still work. Why?"
Quote unquote work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
work as well as it did.
Yeah.
But why? What were you
Mhm.
doing and why was you doing this? What did you need to see in yourself that could be addressed that you thought
Gotcha.
this was fulfilling?
Gotcha. And you clearly spotted a few.
Spotted a few?
Yeah, gotcha. Now, a quick question. Were you already doing jujitsu at this time?
No.
You weren't.
This was one of the reasons why I started jujitsu.
Oh, okay.
Only because it was part of like a 25-year-old life crisis.
Sure.
And I was like, I need to leave the state. I don't want to be here anymore.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
Took a life of
I
its own.
needed to do something, right?
Got
Because I mean, he was like in all the common places I'd always go. So I'm like, I need to rearrange myself.
All right.
And then I started jujitsu.
So anybody out there that is going to spend any time with Ashley, watch it, because if you do a parallel life thing, now she can throw you through the floor. So
And I might enjoy it.
might enjoy. That's so great. Okay. All right. Well, these are all, I mean, we're laughing about it and we're on the other side of these things, right? So that makes it a little bit easier. At the same time, when you're going through it, whether it's a micro failure that, might resonate a little more, might tell you that it's touching a nerve somewhere, those can be beneficial. And the big ones, of course, can be beneficial too, but only if we are willing to reframe it and we are willing to do intentional work to be uncomfortable in such a way to reframe that. It's not something we can just flip a switch and do. I also don't think it's as difficult as we think it's going to be. It's why I really wish that we did a better job collectively of introducing kids to this, right?
Yeah.
And I think really good teachers do know how to do that, right? And I think good parents know how to do that. Introduce kids to situations where they can have little mini failures that are treated as kind of feedback opportunities. Right now, I think it's kind of a mistake to talk to kids like little adults, like try to reason them through it.
Sure.
Right? I think there's better ways to do that than others. However, I do think that's a really powerful thing. And interestingly enough, next week on Staying Power, we're going to have a guest come in. He's actually a guest who's been on the show before, but he's going to be coming in and talking about a school that he runs that is framed around this very idea, giving kids challenges that you can either give them to them, they can choose, all for a certain, goal of learning how to do something. And by design, they run into the challenge of micro failures along the way and have to make adjustments. And it's a whole educational philosophy among many that are out there, but it seems to have really profound effects earlier in life on young kids' abilities to handle failure, to handle challenges, to bounce back from setbacks, and to kind of find more success in themselves. So it's kind of a cool thing that we're talking about this today, because we'll be able to branch out into that a little bit next week. So we hope that you'll stick around for that. Okay. So Ashley,
Yeah.
let's take our second break.
All right.
When we come back, we'll talk about some practical ways that we,
Always
including
practical.
us, our listeners, can apply some of these things, get intentional about these mini failures. We'll also do our weekly segment, which this week is 2 Minutes of Terror. So come on back here on Staying Power just a minute.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Don't ask me to talk.
There's a lot of talk out there. Political talk, sports talk, girl talk, trash talk, and so on. But there's only one, Don't Ask Me to Talk, helmed by conversational off-roaders and podcast pals Eric Ryder and Stacy Heller. They follow every tangent they encounter, from cultural blind spots to their infamous weekly Wheelo topics. Listen wherever you listen to your fave podcasts. Subscribe and share too. Or tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KKNW.
Conversation you won't find on the rest of the dial. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
We are talking about the power of micro failures, little stumbles, not necessarily the huge mistakes we make in life. Those are instructive too. But the ones on the daily that over time can really build up our resilience. I think it's something that we can all relate to, and it makes this feel a lot less scary. But before we get into practical tips that everyone can start applying right away, let's do our weekly segment where Ashley and I each take 2 minutes to talk about something that happened during the week that was either a terror or a triumph. what we learned from it, all in the name of vulnerability and sharing. We hope you'll do the same. This week, we've got 2 minutes of terror. Here we go. So good. All right. Ashley, you had a terror.
Yeah, I guess I could say it's a terror. I had in my professional life, I've had a few conversations over the last handful of weeks, we'll say. And these are kind of conversations that I haven't had before or not in this way. So there's some newness to it, which is a little bit, unnerving. And I was very nervous going into them only because I was sure of myself and I had no idea how the other person was going to respond or react or how that domino would continue downward.
Right.
So they ended up being all right. Like they concluded fine. But the feeling of it, I'm like, all right, Ashley, get it together. You're almost 35 years old. You've been in this profession for a while. You know your stuff inside and out. You're very confident in yourself. What is wrong with you?
It's quite a self-scolding you've
That
got
is
going on.
like a little synopsis of what's inside my head
Wow.
sometimes. But I'm
Okay.
like, but really, what is wrong with you?
Well,
You're fine.
I know, but it's
And I was
still a nervous thing to
still
do.
like, I was feeling a little bit of terror. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this going to cause more problems for me later? Is it even worth having this conversation?
Oh, that's what the terror was.
Because it's sometimes, yes, because I'm like, is this conversation, while it's important, do I have to have it? Can I get away with not having it? And then I'm like, no, you're holding yourself accountable because you are this type of person and this is what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And like I said, they ended up fine, but there was definitely a few moments where I'm like, can I delegate this to somebody else? Why am I the adult in the room right now?
Oh, those types of conversations when you know they're coming and you're not quite sure how it's going to go.
Yeah.
Those are. So what did you learn out of it?
Well, that you can do the best that you can do and they will go the way that they go because you can, in those instances, you can only control and handle yourself.
Right.
And how it lands for other people, no matter how well you can put it may go great for them. It may not go great for them.
Right.
Depending on what it is.
Mhm.
And you just do the best that you can to be prepared going in and clean up what you have to do on the other side.
And their responses may have a lot more to do with them
Yes.
than really with you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how often we have to remind ourselves of that when we're having those types of conversations.
Yeah. That is a very I do like that phrase. Like that's a them problem, not a me problem. So make that distinguished feature.
Oh,
All right,
that's funny.
what do you have?
Okay. Mine is actually similar to that. But in the personal realm, I have a very dear friend of mine who we just have not connected in a while, right? It's just been a little more quiet than I'm used to. And this is a really important person. And we ended up finally reconnecting on the phone the other night. And it wasn't some huge, profound moment or anything like that, but just this realization, this reminder I had. I went into the conversation with some trepidation. I had worked up a story in my head, or at least a small version of a story that was sitting back there, that we were going to have some conversation about kind of like a state of the friendship kind of thing. And instead it was the exact opposite. And instead what happened was what always happens with this same friend every time that, there's a little bit of distance for a while, we always come back on the backside and reconnect. And the moment of terror was thinking it was going to go a certain way. And then, of course, I suppose I could call it a triumph. The other way was, oh, here's the reminder. The track record with this friend is that we do that a lot more often than we have an issue that we really need to talk through. We're not afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to catch that, okay, for me, with all the talk and all the work I do with clients and with myself about various stories, we can still tell ourselves these stories out of this kind of fear of something important to us changing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the terror had more to do with going into it, going, okay, how's this going to go? Similar to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
How's this going to go? And the best I could come up with, though, unlike scolding myself like you did to you, was just remember to breathe. JD, just keep breathing during the conference. Just keep breathing. Everything will be all right. And it turned out to be just fine. And and it was so the opposite of anything. Everything was great. So I think Ashley's going to need a moment because she's absolutely dying.
It's so on brand for you and I that you're always so intuitive. You're always so somatic. You're like, I can feel things. I just breathe through it. And like and I'm over here being like, So difficult on myself.
Yeah, just
The
there,
worst critic over
there
here.
are times I think about Ashley, just breathe. Jeez, you don't have to. You
I'm
don't have
like,
to.
JD, don't you ever pep talk yourself?
You don't have to like
Get
put a.
yourself together over
You
there.
don't have to put like a dunce cap on yourself and put yourself in the corner. Like, you put
Oh,
yourself
nobody
in
puts baby in
timeout.
the corner.
Except yourself. That's okay. But these are the things we wrestle with,
Yeah.
right?
It's just
So
so
you either have
funny.
a tendency to not punish yourself or to scold yourself
Yeah.
at a tense level, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I have a tendency to get wrapped up in the stories about things that I'm hoping won't happen. And I can get out ahead of myself, right?
Yeah.
And that's so that part's challenging. Anyway, that was my terror. So
Okay.
all
Well,
right. So back to tips on how to reframe these micro failures that we all, these little stumbles we have that can be so frustrating, right? And we've all had days. I'm sure you've had days where at the end of the day, you're so frustrated. You look back and go, it's just because a million little things
Oh, yes.
went wrong,
Yep.
right? Quote unquote went wrong, right? It can be so many things. Like I remember having days like that where on one hand, couldn't find a pen that worked, right? Wouldn't get the people I needed to email me back, didn't email me back, or needed to call me back, didn't call me back. Or, best laid plans. Somebody had to change plans at the last minute or whatever the case may be. Those little things can stack up on us. But when it comes to the failures that we have, I think the beginning of the shift is to remember that all failures are just like, sore muscles from lifting weights, right? Or correction you get from a teacher at jujitsu. Though that's feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback on how to do that thing a little bit better the next time, a little bit more smoothly the next time, a little less failure, a little more success, however we want to do that. But to treat failures as first and foremost feedback. And I do try to give myself that name when I realize and go, okay, that's a failure. No, that's feedback. What's the feedback? That changes the question because the failure is I did something I should not have done, or I could have done better, and it's self-focused. Whereas the feedback is, here's how I can do this more effectively, which is a much different message.
Oh, sure.
And it creates a different emotional response in the body. So I would ask anybody listening, think of a mini failure like that, call it a failure, notice how that feels, wherever that might be, and then instead reframe it as feedback. Tell me if you feel something, even if it's just the slightest thing. If it's just the slightest thing, there's something there. And if you don't feel that, that's okay too. Just keep trying it, see what happens. I think that's the first step.
I think that's a good one, actually.
you.
I think
Thank you.
I
It's-
like that.
You laugh at me when I talk about that stuff, but you do like it.
I might try it once in a while. I would say in a safer setting, if you have one, I would encourage you to share a mini stumble, whatever you want to call it, that you might have from time to time. Whether
with
it's
somebody else.
Yeah, well, depending. Maybe it's you writing it in your journal.
I see.
You want to talk about it with a trusted friend or somebody, a colleague of yours that feels safe, where they're not going to be judging you and you're not going to obviously cause any damage or out anybody for anything if something goes wrong, right? But to get in the practice of speaking out loud of what it was, because you start to learn that it's not as embarrassing when you actually own it.
This is true.
And embrace it. And it's like, yeah, did that, messed up. Okay. And then you probably are going to be talking to somebody that will then be like, oh, yeah, I could do one better. And then it almost becomes not fun, but it feels better talking about the fact that, oh, this happened. And hey, look, I survived.
Yeah.
And what can I learn from it? Like you said, and then incorporate like the feedback of it of like, oh, okay, well, I did that. We all know that wasn't great. What can I do better?
Right. And it also it opens the door to empathy because you can realize that you're not the only one going through that. Somebody else realizes they're not the only one going through that. And depending on who it is, if it's a friend, if it's a partner, that can actually lead to more intimacy in that sense. It can be really good. It's something that we as coaches experience a lot, right? We encourage all our clients to talk about these things. And without fail, as they talk about them, they make realizations about them, right? I mean, it is amazing, right? We are designed to work things out a lot more by speaking them out loud or writing them down than we are just by swimming around in our own heads, right? Which is actually neurologically proven, people. I mean, that's pretty important. Okay.
Swim around. Okay.
Yeah. Another
All
one.
right.
Another one. Humor is really important here, right? And I have to remember this a lot, Ashley, because without recognizing it, I can get hard on myself for even micro failures, getting a drink wrong, right?
Really?
Something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, I don't like the feeling
Mhm.
and I want to fix it. And I'm driven to do it differently. And that's not bad by itself. But I could uncouple that from not laughing at myself a little bit about that, right?
Mhm.
I had experience the other night where that drink thing happened with a longtime regular at the pub that I work at. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." And he was so great. He said, "Hey, man, I couldn't do what you're doing."
Oh, that's nice.
He said, "I couldn't do it." He's like, "I'm really good at sitting on this side of the bar and ordering it. I wouldn't be really good being on that side of the bar making it." I appreciated that so much,
That's really
right? And I
nice.
actually ended up thanking him for that, a little
Mhm.
bit later because I said, "I appreciate that." And then I said, "Hey, man, thanks for saying that. I'm really trying to do this well because I
Mhm.
want to do it well. And I can get pretty hard on myself." And he goes, "Yeah, I can tell."
Were you in the back, like, stomping your
Yeah,
feet?
no, just, it can look pensive, I guess. So
Well,
I think,
yeah.
and I think the important thing is to laugh with yourself in something and not at yourself. It's not
Mhm.
something to mock in ourselves. It's something to appreciate is very much part of the human experience. And laughing at it can help us turn it more into feedback rather than
Mhm.
focusing on it as failure.
That's good. The last little tidbit I would say is if you're comfortable, again, that this isn't so awkward for you, but kind of in a way keep a log. And I don't mean like, here's my list of failures, but if you are
Here's my
one,
list of feedback.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Right. It's all in how you frame it. But if you kind of like if people like journal or things like that, and then you go back and you read the journal from a year or two before,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, I remember that moment. What was going on? I remember where my headspace was at. This I always find really fascinating is I would sometimes write down, like, the failures that I did or had or experienced, whatnot, and then so many months later, I would go back and read through them, and I'm like,
Hmm.
"That was so problematic back then, and now,
It's
like, not
nothing.
even in my orbit," or what did I learn? How did I where that was such a problem or such a stumbling block,
Hmm.
now that's become one of my strongest attributes,
Yeah.
things like that, and I think it's important to do that because then as you're going through modern present day little micro failures, you can think about, yeah, it was a failure today. It's going to be fantastic in like 6 months when I look back and see what did I learn from this?
Absolutely.
Going through that feedback, like you
Yeah.
said.
What lessons did you harvest out of it? I
Mhm.
mean, because that's the thing. If we're open to learning as many lessons as we can actually learn to really appreciate that process. I love that idea of doing a log. I think I'm going to start doing that.
All right.
Actually, that's not one that I do, but I think I'll do that. And I think the final one that I would add would be aware that you do have physical responses to this, right? It's for me, I mentioned it with the bar example. I get increased nervousness and energy, and I can feel that in my shoulders and I feel it behind my eyes, right? And I get flushed
Mhm.
and I get shaky, like I start speeding up, right?
Mm.
When really what I have to do in those moments is I've learned
Breathe
I
and
have to
slow
breathe
down.
and slow
Okay.
down
Oh, this is making
and
sense.
then step back and go, "Okay, let me put my feet right back where they belong." This is and I sometimes do that where I'm like, I look down at my feet and go, "There are my feet. They're right there. Now look up. What's around you?" In this case, it's the bar, it's the patrons, it's the televisions, it's the glasses, it's the beer tabs. This is where I'm at.
Mhm.
Just put myself back here.
Hmm.
I've learned I have to do that and then take a deep breath, right? So we have our somatic responses and they show up in different places in different ways for everybody. So I would encourage you to think about that too. So anyway,
All right.
all right. So a challenge for all listeners, I would think, is pick one of those things. I like this idea of like tracking, a couple of
Yeah.
micro failures when they happen or when a little mini stumble, if you will, and reflect on what you learned. And if that happens, when that happens, we encourage you to reach out to us at our email, stayingpowershow@gmail.com. You can also find in the show notes for this as a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on our YouTube channel or at the website 1150 AM KKNW. You can find all the links to our social media accounts. We'd love to hear from you, get your feedback on this episode, ideas for further episodes, and the like. We will be back next week with a special guest. We'll be talking about doing exactly what we just talked about with little kiddos and what the lessons they are learning from that. Really excited to bring in our friend Chris Wolf next week. So we'll see you next week with Chris in tow. Till then, I'm JD.
And I'm always Ashley.
Always Ashley. See you later. We're
Bye.
changing your name to that. Bye.